Lincoln County and Sanders County. I actually live in Seeley Lake, Montana, and thus in the last election I ran for this district and was successful or prevailed at that election. I thought I'd start out by giving a brief history of why we have gotten to this point that the buyout has been proposed. And I'm going to read from some testimony that was presented by John Wilson. This is not an endorsement of John Wilson's testimony. It's merely a nice summary of what's happened over the course of the last 10 years. At this point in the history of utility service in the state of Montana, consumers have been through 3 seismic events in less than a decade. The first of these events was the sale of Montana Power Company's generation plants to PPL, which ultimately resulted in substantially higher power supply costs. The second event was the sale of Montana Power's transmission and distribution assets to Northwest Corporation in February of 2002. This event paralleled the transformation of Montana Power into Touch America Holdings and Touch America's rapid descent into bankruptcy. The third seismic event was the Chapter 11 bankruptcy of Northwestern itself, resulting in a large measure from improvident diversification into propane and home appliance sales and a net-based application service provider enterprise. In other words, the passing of deregulation in 1997 did not cause the diversification of assets by Montana Power, but it certainly did facilitate it. However, I believe, and I think the history will prove this to be right, that Montana Power was bound and determined to turn itself into a telecommunications company, and that is exactly what they did. Unfortunately, their timing couldn't have been worse, because when they sold the dams and sold the transmission lines, they immediately put the money into fiber optic cable in the ground, and once they got that project completed, it wasn't more than 2 or 3 months, and the whole market fell out of the telecommunications business, and within that 4 or 5 months, Touch America was bankrupt. When Northwestern declared bankruptcy in 2002, their stock went from around $30 per share down to distress, $2 and $3. When it got to that point, the only market that there was for the stock were hedge funds and speculators. As a consequence of that, today the people that hold the majority of Northwestern Energy stock are those same people, the hedge funds and the speculators, who have no interest in carrying that stock in their portfolio for a long period of time. They are interested in realizing the gains that have occurred and selling their stock. It's because of that pressure from those stockholders that Northwestern about a year ago solicited offers from individual entities, companies, and so on and so forth, offers to buy their company and to buy that stock. It's my understanding that they had about 23 of those offers presented to them. They went through them, and Northwestern chose BVI Infrastructure out of Sydney, Australia, as the entity that they would like to sell the company to, or that they would like to see merge into the new company, or the new entity. In other words, and this is the way they presented in the original filing, the original petition, is that they're telling us at the Public Service Commission and the people of the state of Montana that really nothing is going to change. What's going to happen is that the people who hold the stock today are going to sell to BVI. Stock will change. It will become a different identity of the holders of the stock, but Northwestern will retain its current structure, its current identity, its current customer base, and so on and so forth. I wish it were that simple. I think it's much more. It takes much more of an in-depth analysis than what that petition presents to us, and that's what we're going through now. And I will tell you that this buyout has been looked at by the South Dakota Public Service Commission, by the Nebraska Commission, and also by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And all three of those entities have said that they would not stand in the way of the merger or the buyout. So Montana is the only state and the only place where we are going to have the kind of in-depth look at the proposal that I think the proposal merits, and certainly for the sake of the people of the state, the kind of proposal or the kind of in-depth look that I think it merits. The docket in Helena that currently exists in the buyout proposal is docket number 2006.6.82. Staff tells me that docket runs almost 150,000 pages. And I won't pretend to you that I've read 150,000 pages. I don't think I'm going to live that long. But we have 5 staff members who are going through the docket and through the information that's been filed and the data request and all the rest of it. And we will be prepared to hold the hearing next Wednesday. There currently is a cloud over that date, and the cloud is that there are a couple of different entities who have filed for late intervention, and there's one entity, Kelp and Yelp, help me here, Colstrip Energy Limited Partnership and Yellowstone Energy Limited Partnership, their acronyms are Kelp and Yelp, have filed for an extension of the hearing date in order to so that they can file testimony in the docket at a late date. That is currently in front of Judge Hansel in Helena, and we have not yet received an opinion from Judge Hansel as to whether we are going to be forced to extend the date or the date of the 14th or not. As it stands today, next Wednesday will be the beginning of the hearings. We expect those hearings to go on for at least 3 days, if not on into the next week, 4 and 5 days. I'd like to introduce the people at the table here, and I apologize for this. I had envisioned myself as kind of standing up here informally and walking around, but they are apparently videotaping this or taping it for the MCAT TV station here, and they've asked us to use the microphone, so here I sit. I have at the table here to my immediate left from Sydney, Australia, is Adrian Van Jaarstad, and he is the General Manager of Regulation for Babcock and Brown Infrastructure. Next to him, to my immediate left, is Dave Gates, and Dave is with the Northwestern Energy Corporation, and it isn't that I can't figure out what he does, I just don't know. What is your title?
Vice President, Wholesale Operations.
Vice President, Wholesale Operations. Immediately to my right is Robin McHugh, and Robin McHugh is a attorney for the Public Service Commission. He is actually our lead attorney. And next to him is Bob Nelson, and Bob Nelson is an attorney with the Montana Consumer Council. I've given you a brief overview, and let me check something here. The remainder of the schedule is we are currently in the process of getting answers to the rebuttal testimony, and there's a process that we go through where they file testimony, there's rebuttal testimony, and then there are answers to the rebuttal testimony. That's coming in as we speak in this week. So we've been reading that testimony. We have these public meetings. There's one left, I believe, after this, maybe one tomorrow. There's one in Helena on Monday. I think that's the last one, however, and I'm not sure whether there are any tomorrow or not. The Public Service Commission staff will put forward a fact memo, and they have actually done that, and make a summary of the testimony. That'll be coming up, but we do have a fact sheet which they put out early this week, I believe. No, last week it was. And the technical hearing begins on March 14th, and that is the hearing where we will hear from all of the interveners. We'll hear from the principals, Babcock and Brown and Northwestern. They will ask us to put their pre-filed testimony into the record, and then everybody who has filed as an intervener and everybody who's a principal and the commission will all have a chance to ask questions of the individuals who are a party to the docket. There will most likely be 3 sets of post-hearing briefs and responses, and then the decision will be made, given the current schedule, sometime in mid to late May. There are three results that could come from the hearing. We could say yes, we could say no, or we can say yes with conditions to ensure that there's a reasonable, adequate supply, and that we will see a reasonable opportunity to have just and reasonable rates. After that, there will be motions for reconsideration, very likely, and after that, there will also be as the potential for judicial review. In other words, people will go to court to challenge the decision. The format tonight, we'll have, I believe we'll have Dave speak first, and then Browning and Babcock make your presentation, Adrian, and then there'll be a response from the Consumer Council, and then we will open it up for either public comment or questions of any of the participants here. Again, I had envisioned this as being much less formal than this, but it is what it is, and we certainly don't want anybody to be intimidated, and we encourage you to stand forward. We do have not forms, but information out in the hallway. If you're not comfortable standing up and giving public testimony, that will give you the information and the instructions you need in order to file testimony by mail or in writing. So, with that, Dave, I will ask you to stand forward.
Thank you, and Commissioner Rudin, thank you for having the Commission and for you personally having these forums. And thank you all for coming this evening. My name is Dave Gates. I'm the Vice President of Wholesale Operations for Northwestern Energy. I reside in Butte, and I've been a part of the utility industry here in Montana for the past 29 years. Before I make a few comments, I'd also like to introduce Nicole Benj, who is our Missoula Division Manager, and if you have any local service questions or things this evening, she's here to take those questions and answer them for you. If there's one message I'd like to have delivered tonight is that we're in the utility business. We've been in the utility business for a long time, and we care about our customers. What we're here for is service that's reliable, affordable, and stable for the long run. That's why we selected BBI. Their investment profile is that shareholders are associated with long-term investors. They're conservative investors, and their interests are aligned with our company and with the shareholders. You might ask yourself, how is this sale going to, this sale going to change things? And the answer to that is not very much, but for the better. Northwestern Energy will remain Northwestern Energy. We'll have the same utility management team that we have today. We'll have the same team of dedicated employees, 106 of whom live in the Missoula division, somewhere between Kalispell and Hamilton, and in some of the small towns to the west of here. We have about 1,100 employees in Montana, all told, and all of those folks will remain here. And we've added, I think, about 30 or 40 over the last couple of years in staff in Montana. Our operating headquarters will remain in Butte, as well as our local division headquarters here and area headquarters up in up in Kalispell and down in Hamilton. And we're going to remain committed to Montana and its communities. Our call center that's located in Butte, Montana has won service awards, 3 years running national awards from rating agencies that grade utility call centers. We're going to remain committed to our corporate giving campaign. We have roughly $500,000 that we give annually throughout our service territories, not only in Montana but in South Dakota. And those corporate giving programs are administered by local committees. Nicole and her team here in Missoula and Kalispell are the ones that you would go to for those kind of requests, in case you want to look for a donation or something. But that's administered locally so that we're in touch with our consumers in each of our service territories. We're also continuing the $1 million challenge grant that we started last year for low-income and modest-income customers that need assistance with their energy bills. The protections that were put in place through the stipulation that was signed for the bankruptcy hearings between the Commission and Consumer Council and the company are also going to remain in place after the sale. Two primary ones that have come to light are the ring fencing provision, which is designed to prevent utility companies from pledging their assets for non-utility ventures. Those things that got a number of utility companies in trouble in the past decades. That will remain in place. Also, our commitment to what's called the Liberty Audit, which was a review of our operation and maintenance programs and gave us some good advice as to how we might improve those, will also remain in place. So if everything stays the same, you might ask yourself, why again do we think we need to do this if it's all going to stay the same? And there are really two reasons. One is the fact that utility business is extremely capital intensive. It's a very capital intensive business, and having access to adequate capital to allow for operation and maintenance of our system, upgrade of our system, growth where it's necessary is very important. The other thing that's important for us is to have a shareholder whose interests are aligned with ours, that's interested in being in the utility business, and understands the business as well, and that's what BBI brings to us. They've got a history of that, and Adrian will expound on that in a little bit. I should mention one thing that you've heard a lot in the press. Well, the question comes up: is there going to be a rate increase due to the sale? And the answer to that is no. Any premiums that are paid for the purchase of the shares of Northwestern Energy stock will be paid for by the shareholders of BBI, not Northwestern Energy customers. Now, that's not to say that there may or may not be a rate increase some other time due to cost increases on our transmission and distribution system, the cost of delivering service to the customers in Montana. We haven't had a general rate increase or any increase on those services since 2000, and certainly over the last few years we've all felt some of the pressures of increasing costs and a number of things. So if that occurs, we'll take that case to the Public Service Commission, and the rules and procedures that are in place, have always been in place, will continue to be in place, and if we file a rate case, they'll be the ones to adjudicate it and decide if it's reasonable or not. You also may have heard that in the press that we may be over-earning, and that isn't the case, and if you'd care to, in some of the public documents that we file annually with the Public Service Commission, you'll be able to see what our actual return on our operations is, and we're required to file that on an annual basis. The daunting task in front of the commissioners of 160,000 pages is something that speaks to the complexity of the case, and we appreciate not only the commission but their staff in diligence in prosecuting the case and looking at it, because it isn't a simple matter, and we have had a long decade of turmoil in Montana in the utility business. The last comment would simply be that to remember our message is that we're here to be here as your utility company for the long run. We think we've done an excellent job of that, and we'd like to continue to do that, and this, we believe, this transaction will provide us the stability that we haven't had for some time to provide that service to our customers here in Montana. And with that, I'll introduce once again Adrian Van Jaarsveld from BBI.
Adrian. Thanks, Dave. And thanks to all of you for coming out tonight and giving us a chance to talk to you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about BBI, because we do come from a long way away, and not a lot is known about us in Montana. But apart from that, I really don't have much to say tonight, and we're here mainly to listen to you and to listen to what concerns you may have, and to answer any questions that you may have as best as we can. As Dave said, I'm BBI's regulatory general manager, and I've been traveling around the state. I have to say I'm probably enjoying going to these meetings a bit more than I'm supposed to be, because it's really giving me a good opportunity to see parts of Montana that I probably never would have if I didn't do this. So that's been great. Now about BBI. BBI is an Australian company. Our stock is traded and listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. Our job is basically investing in essential infrastructure. And we manage a portfolio of assets, which the current total value of those assets is currently around $4.5 billion US, and they fall broadly into two categories. They're either energy networks such as Northwestern, or they are transport-related infrastructure, and in that sector we own a number of ports and we own a rail network in Australia. We're part of a much larger group called Babcock and Brown, and Babcock and Brown is an international global investment bank, which was in fact founded right here in the U.S. About 30 years ago in San Francisco. Babcock and Brown have offices all over the world. I think they're up to about 26 offices by now, and around 1,000 employees. So BBI, or Babcock and Brown Infrastructure, is a fund that is managed by Babcock and Brown, but not owned. Our shares are owned by our shareholders, by the public, by people like you and me. And we like to think that we're a little bit different from the sort of company that's usually owned by an investment bank, because we're not investment bankers. The people who run BBI generally have utility or infrastructure backgrounds. So, for instance, my background is working with utility businesses in the regulatory environment and helping them to face up to that. Our CEO has a very operational background. In fact, he started life as an electrician linesman with PowerCo, which is our other energy network business in New Zealand. It's New Zealand's second largest electricity and gas distribution business. It's a business that's in fact very similar to Northwestern in many ways, in that it has roughly the same number of customers, and it also services an area that is sort of predominantly rural and in smallish towns. BBI is one of many funds that Babcock and Brown manages. It is the largest, but there are a number of other funds in the Babcock and Brown family, including funds that specialize in power generation, including funds that specialize in alternative sources of energy. For example, there's one fund called Babcock and Brown Wind Partners, which I believe is now the third largest owner of wind farms in the U.S. So that in a nutshell, that's a little bit about BBI. But the other thing that people really want to know is why we are interested in buying Northwestern. Well, we obviously took a very long, hard look at the business, and we liked what we saw. We saw a business that has quality assets. It has stable cash flows. It operates in a regulated environment, and that regulated environment has been going for a long time and is very stable. It has an excellent management team, and the management team is supported by a bunch of very dedicated employees who really take their jobs seriously and take a great deal of passion and pride in their work, we have found. And on top of all of that, in other words, we like the basic bones of the business, but on top of all of that, we see some real opportunities for growth in Montana. And I think we're not alone in that view. And to achieve that growth and to underwrite that growth, Montana will need a good, reliable energy utility, and we believe that Northwestern can be that in the long run, and we'd like to be there with them doing that. In terms of our plans for the company, again, as Dave said, those are very simple. BBI, the management and staff of BBI consists of only around 20 people based in Sydney, Australia. So we cannot buy businesses. We cannot go and invest in businesses where there is no management team in place that we can trust and rely on to manage the business well. So we do entirely place that reliance in the local management teams, and we believe that we're right in doing that with Northwestern. And then generally all we do is get out of the way and let them get on with managing the business locally as they always have done. So the existing management team of Northwestern will remain in place. The name Northwestern will remain. Staffing levels will remain. There are no plans to cut staff levels. We fully support the level of community involvement and charitable giving programs that Northwestern have been involved in. Our business is essential infrastructure, and it's important that the businesses that we invest in keep close to the communities that they're servicing. So that's very much part of our philosophy. And then finally, the other thing that's important to note about our plans for Northwestern is that our role is really to make sure that Northwestern has sufficient cash to invest back into the network, to make sure that the network continues to remain reliable and continues to provide customers with reliable service. Now, this is to some extent contrary to some reports that you might have read in the media over the last few weeks or months. And these reports basically revolve around two things. One is that we plan to take out more money out of Northwestern than they are paying to their current shareholders, or in fact more than is normal practice for utilities in the U.S. And secondly, that we plan to weigh down Northwestern with too much additional debt. Now, those assertions come out of a study that a consultant engaged by the Montana Consumer Council has carried out. It's a study of the acquisition model that BBI used to evaluate how much we were prepared to pay for Northwestern. It's essentially a spreadsheet model. It's a calculation which represents a valuation of the company at a specific point in time. It is just a calculation, and it is just at a specific point in time. It doesn't pretend to be a model that shows how Northwestern will be run going forward. So we completely disagree with these statements and with the conclusions reached by the MCC's consultant. But I'd rather not dwell on those points here. Those are matters for the technical hearing, which is coming up next week. I'd rather focus on where we agree with the MCC, and where we agree is on a series of provisions or conditions that they have suggested be put in place to provide additional protections to Montana consumers over and above the protection that you're already afforded by the Public Service Commission. With one or two exceptions, we completely support those conditions, and we believe that those, in addition to the protection that's already provided by the Commission, provides very good protection to Montana consumers. The reality is that, regardless of all of these assertions of taking money out of the company and loading it up with debt, the reality is that no sensible person and no sensible investor will buy a business or buy an asset and then just let it deteriorate by not investing back into it to make sure that it is maintained and that it continues to provide good service and therefore a return to its owners over the long run. To understand BBI, you really have to understand who our shareholders are. Our shareholders are bought predominantly by pension funds and people saving for their retirement. These are people who are looking for stable, reliable cash flows and returns over the long term. If you're looking for speculative gain or windfall gain in the short term, then BBI is not the stock for you. It's a steady as she goes type of return, and because of that, we look for businesses like Northwestern that can provide those types of return to us. So we would always ensure And this is really our the philosophy that we apply across all of the businesses in our group. We would ensure that the business has sufficient cash available to pay its employees, pay its taxes, pay its operating costs, reinvest in the network to make sure that it's properly maintained, and then reinvest or invest in growth opportunities where those opportunities make sense. And it's only after those things have all been taken care of that there's money available to distribute to the shareholders. Now, we do appreciate that there has been an up and down, rocky history in the utility sector in Montana over the last decade. And so we do understand the level of scrutiny that we're coming under. And we know that you expect the Commission, and we expect the Commission to take a long look at any new prospective owner for Northwestern. But we believe that we can stand up to that scrutiny. We think that BBI, as BBI, we're good owners, good responsible owners of utility assets. We're very excited about being here. As we see great potential in Montana, growth potential, and we'd like to be here for the long run. Thanks for listening, and I'll obviously be around afterwards. If you have a question you don't want to ask in the public forum, I'll be happy to speak to you afterwards. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Next, once again, to introduce Bob Nelson from the Montana Consumer Council. The Consumer Council is a constitutionally created council which is charged with the responsibility of representing Montana consumers in front of the Commission, and they are a party to this docket, as they are with virtually every docket that we have in front of us at the Public Service Commission. Bob?
Thank you. As you just heard, I'm Bob Nelson, the Consumer Council, and like Commissioner Mood, I apologize for having to speak to you from so far away. But I did want to just give you a brief description of what the Consumer Council is and what we do and how we do it. As Commissioner Mood mentioned, we're a constitutional agency. We're established to represent consumer interests in proceedings primarily before the Public Service Commission, such as this. So we do participate in most every proceeding before the Commission. And we do that with a fairly small staff in Helena, and we also retain services of consultants who specialize in certain areas that are raised by issues in applications that come before the Commission, such as this particular docket. And in this case, we've retained the services of Dr. John Molson, who works with us quite a bit and has appeared in cases in Montana, I think, for approximately 30 years, has a long background in utility cases and utility matters all around the United States. And what we do is there's a long process involved in these cases where the company typically submits their testimony, their application, and then we submit detailed questions. And when I say we, I'd have to include other interveners. There are other interveners such as us in this case. All of the interveners submit questions and get answers from the company. And then the company, or the interveners file testimony in response to the company's applications. And then the company gets to ask us questions, and we respond to those, and they file rebuttal testimony, and then another round of questions follows that. So even after we file our testimony, there's a continuing process and information being produced, and we still analyze those things right up basically till the point of the hearing. In this case, and I'll describe for you, I guess, generally what Dr. Wilson's conclusions were. I'm not going to get into a lot of the details, but the general inquiry in this case is how the proposed merger would affect rates and services. That's the fundamental issue. And in trying to get at that question, we looked at a lot of particular sub-issues, and we came to focus on the financial aspects of this deal, and I'd like to explain to you why that is. I think it's understandable because, as you probably know, the purchase price is approximately $2.2 billion, and of that, about $700 million is an acquisition premium, or a payment over and above book costs. For a public utility in Montana, that's a special concern because utility rates are based primarily on book costs, or original cost minus depreciation. So that, for us, naturally raises the question of how BBI intends to recover the additional payment that they're making, the acquisition premium. And more particularly, will those plans affect rates and services in the long run? And to answer that question, in our minds, we ended up looking at BBI's own analysis, and there were actually several of these, of why Northwestern is worth a purchase price of $2.2 billion, given the way utility rates are set in Montana. And we have looked pretty closely at what has been called the acquisition model, and you just heard a brief discussion of why BBI thinks it's inappropriate to look at that. But nevertheless, we think that it did form the basis for the acquisition, and or at least part of the basis for the acquisition, and is revealing of the potential pitfalls for the company's plans and its application. So when Dr. Wilson looked at that information, he suggested that the Commission consider several particular concerns and address these in considering the application. And I'll just outline those concerns for you. The first was that the assumed cash distributions in this plan far exceeded Northwestern's own original projections of cash distributions over the next 4 years, on the order of approximately $450 million. That's a pretty significant amount, a pretty significant difference, and the importance of that, I think, is underscored by the fact that that distribution appears to exceed 150% of Northwestern's earnings. And in addition, it appears to be far more than the typical utility pays in distributions. In a related matter, the second concern was that the capital expenditures in the model, at least, appeared to be less than depreciation. So that raises the question again about capital expenditures and long-term effects on service. A third issue is BBI's proposed handling of cash distributions, and whether or not that particular plan that at least was in the acquisition model would conform with the ring fencing provisions that we all worked very hard to get in place as a result of the bankruptcy proceeding a couple of years ago. Fourth, it appears that the model, despite some of the assertions and statements that the applicants have made, at least in the model, it appeared that there was an assumption of inclusion of the acquisition premium in the utility's capital structure, and we think that that deserves some further consideration by the Commission. And finally, we are concerned that BBI in its assessments has assumed that certain cash expenses will be included in rates that may be contested because, in our view, and perhaps other interveners' view, those expenses are not actually being paid and shouldn't be the responsibility of ratepayers. So as a result of those considerations, and naturally they were presented in more detail in our testimony, Dr. Wilson's overall conclusion is that as the merger is proposed, it would increase the level of risk for ratepayers. And so he proposed several conditions be placed on the merger if it's approved. And I won't go into those conditions because they basically just address those concerns that I described for you. And I'll just stop right there unless you have any questions so that we can hear what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to read a list of the interveners, and these are the organizations and people who will be at the hearing and have the right to cross-examine and enter evidence. There's the Montana Consumer Council, AARP Montana, the Colstrip Energy Limited Partnership, the Yellowstone Energy Limited Partnership, the Human Resources Council District 11, Natural Resource Defense Council, the Renewable Northwest Project District 11 again, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 444, no, it's Local 44, the Montana Large Customer Group, the Heartland Consumer Power District, and the South Dakota Public Power Incorporated. In addition to that, I referenced earlier that we've had two more requests for late intervention, and that's from the retirees, and you may have seen that in the paper recently, that there was a award given to some of the retirees of the Montana Power Company in the nature of $17 million, I believe. And a company called Mag10 Asset Management Corporation out of, and they're represented by lawyers out of New York City. Again, this feels funny. You know, Robin here has chided the commission at times for the way our tables are set up, where he says it feels like we're too far separated from the crowd, and the semicircle really feels like we're separated, and I feel like I'm at the United Nations or something. But I keep saying that because it just feels funny, and we certainly don't want this to be a formal feeling. We want it to be a very conversational. With that, I have another introduction. Connie Jones accompanied me to Missoula today to help with the setup and some of the technical things that we need to do to get this to move. And Connie is in the back here. I want to introduce her and thank her for her help with the meeting today. With that, I'd open it up so we have a microphone. Again, it's being recorded so that we can include this as part of the administrative record in the docket, and we would encourage any members of the audience who so desire to come and either ask questions of the participants or myself, or to make comments about the proposed buyout.
Hi. My name is Stacy Ryan. I live in Missoula. I'm just getting over an illness. And I sit up there twice a week. So although I don't think it's formal, but I guess you do get used to it. I am a member of the Missoula City Council, but I'm not here representing the City Council in any way, shape, or form. Although Missoula was part of the 5 cities that did put in a bid on the sale of Northwestern. I wanted to comment against the proposed sale on a couple of different bases. I believe one of the criteria, can you hear me okay?
I think you turn it so it's directly in there you go. Yeah.
One of the criteria you look at is whether or not the proposed company has a Montana focus, and I would question that on a bunch of different bases. Babcock & Brown does have 26 offices around the world, but the U.S. only accounts for about 16% of their group revenues. They have holdings in real estate, infrastructure and project finance, operating, leasing, corporate finance, ports, railroads, an Irish telephone company, a Belgian container company, and several operating divisions and other focuses. And it's my experience or it's my understanding that their experience of owning transmission and distribution power companies is short-lived and limited. Only 3 or 4 of their ownings investments are in utilities out of several dozen, and the oldest of which is only 2 or 3 years old. So they haven't been in the power business for very long, at most 2 or 3 years old. And out of all of their divisions and out of all of their holdings, only I think 3 companies are within transmission and distribution power. And this is where Northwestern Energy got into trouble, was taking its focus off of the utility, off of the Montana customers, and investing elsewhere, outside of utilities, and going into bankruptcy. We all know this story, which ultimately led us here tonight. I would also question the desire to perhaps build, that Babcock & Brown would most likely have, to build generation and possibly more transmission and distribution while asking ratepayers to subsidize this. having that power go out of state, because while we have a very limited number of customers here in Montana, but a huge potential for generation and distribution to the west. And I don't know why it is that we would want to subsidize that. Power is an essential commodity, and for all intents and purposes in Montana, it's a monopoly. We would likely have little to no say in a multinational corporation. I would also question the report on profits that someone mentioned. If we would have any access to information like that, if the company were essentially headquartered in Australia. I don't know if it's even traded in the U.S. or if it's publicly traded out of Sydney. So would we have any access to information about maximizing profits that's over and above what utilities usually do? And that's the openness and the transparency that I think we should expect in Montana. And I believe that when the files first started to come in for this docket, they protested opening some of those files so that you could have an open and transparent look at what you're to do. I hope that the PSC looks very closely at this transaction and in comparison with other bids that were made as well. I would ask Northwestern Energy to please find an owner that would have only a Montana focus and have our best interests in mind. I would also question something that the Montana Consumer Council said, and it was something about the debt is equity, but the equity is debt in the company. And I've read a little bit about this in other places, and I don't understand how debt is really equity, but not. And I also don't understand the management fees that BBI is expected to pay, or that Northwestern would be expected to pay up on the line. So please consider this very seriously, and our future is at stake here. And I would like a utility company personally that just had a Montana focus, didn't have focuses all over the world, and with a very small focus in utilities. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cork? I think the microphone's been turned off. There's a little green light on.
There we go.
There you
go. Commissioner Mood, thank you for coming today to take this testimony. I'd welcome our visitor from Australia. Perhaps this would be an easier conversation if we were sitting down at the Oaks over a midday of new, but nonetheless, good day. Thank you for coming. I hope
Just state your name, please, and then.
I'm Steve Korek, and I'm here as a private citizen, hopefully representing some of the alternative energy producers in the state. I'm also a board member of the Green Electricity Buying Cooperative. And my concern is that we're in a situation here in Montana where this proposed sale and the concomitant re-regulation of Northwestern Energy are creating a situation where we are pedaling furiously backward to 1980. We found, much to our chagrin, that the deregulation of 1997 was bore a terrible cost for all of us here in Montana, and our solution to that appears to be to re-regulate Northwestern, and then in the process of that to sell it to a corporation from another country. And being in the alternative energy business, I guess a question that we're going to ask of the new management is what their position is going to be toward the development of alternative energy, which, with the exception of Montana, is going gangbusters all over the United States. And yet here, and I must say I'm kind of shocked by this, we find that we have 4 Northwestern energy lobbyists fighting madly against us in the state legislature on the Green Electricity Buying Cooperative Bill, which simply would allow us the right to own wind generation and therefore use a $31.7 million federal clean renewable energy bond to begin to develop wind energy in Montana. Now, I understand that you seem to have an interest in the support of alternative energy, so one of the questions I'm going to ask is whether this kind of opposition to the development of small energy is in fact a part of your corporate philosophy, or if your corporation may have a slightly different philosophy toward that than Northwestern obviously has. To paraphrase Ronald Reagan, I wonder if there are any scarier words, any words that are harder to believe than "I'm from a successor to Touch America and Montana Power, and I'm here to help you." And I know that all of us would like to think that that is in fact going to be the case. We certainly have not had a particularly good run here the last few years, and we're hoping to find some support for the people of Montana. And one of the places where that support could be directed is to the tremendous opportunity we have to develop alternative energy in its many forms here in Montana, from wind energy, from photovoltaic energy, from hydro, and in the opportunity that that provides to Montana's many, many farmers, ranchers, landowners, developers, to be able to get a little piece of that, and also in the process to be able to create a broader-based energy production structure that gives us greater energy security at a national and an international level, and allows the people of Montana to begin to profit from this boom that is happening everywhere else. And what we see here instead is, it seems from Northwestern Energy, that we are being opposed at every level in this attempt to develop alternative energy, and I'm frankly kind of surprised at that. Conversely, in the states around us, both the companies and the legislatures are rushing with open arms toward this opportunity, and there are hundreds of millions of dollars of money that's being directed toward the development of alternative energy. Now, we had quite a coup here in Montana recently, because we actually were able to receive $72 million out of $800 million that was offered in clean renewable energy bonds at a national level, which for a small state like Montana is a remarkable amount. And it means that finally we actually have a real opportunity to begin to develop alternative energy and to begin to help the small business people of Montana have a model by which that they can take to the bank, that they can use to then demonstrate that there is a viable model to sell renewable energy. But to do that, we need the assistance of Northwestern Energy. Hopefully we will be able to get the assistance of Brown and Babcock in that process, especially given that there is, at this point, no production capacity that you're going to have. It seems like there might be a way to, in fact, coordinate our various interests. Surrounding states, let me just give you a quick rundown. In Minnesota, Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty has signed a bill that requires Minnesota energy companies to provide 25% of their power from renewable sources to their customers by 2025. Now, here in Montana, we do have a 15% renewable energy portfolio standard that's supposed to be implemented by 2020. So we do have that coming up. It has been mandated by the state legislature, but we've not, unfortunately, seen much support for that from Northwestern Energy. And certainly one of the things that I think a lot of folks in Montana would love to see from the new management is that we see some support for that and see a way of working together. Particularly, I hope that you'll get the chance to spend some time in eastern Montana, where the farmers and ranchers have a terrible problem. They have tremendously erratic rainfall. On top of that, they have the wild fluctuations of the commodities market. Most of the little towns are losing population. They're losing the ability to maintain a livelihood, and the one lifeline that might be there is the ability to set up a fair relationship with the power company and produce energy and make a living from that, and then be able to buy their trucks in the local market, to be able to continue to support the local feed store, to keep the cafe open, and to bring some of the prosperity that we found here in the boot of western Montana and on through Billings and Bozeman to the High Line. And I think there's a great opportunity to do that, and I would very, very much love to see that happen here. But at this point, we have not seen that support. And I actually would ask the question, if if there is perhaps a different philosophy that Babcock and Brown will bring to the table in that area. Is that possible? May we look forward to that?
Adrian, would you like to respond?
No, that's better. Look, let me just say two things on behalf of BBI and Babcock and Brown, and then I think I need to hand it over to Dave to talk about the issues that Northwestern have with alternative energy and the support or otherwise of those projects. But first of all, the thing I'd like to say on behalf of Babcock and Brown is that we are very enthusiastic supporters of alternative energy solutions. I mentioned Babcock and Brown Wind Partners, which is a dedicated company dedicated to building wind farms. It is I think it's the third largest owner of wind farms in the U.S. at present, and is rapidly expanding all over the world. In the remainder of the Babcock and Brown family, there are other environmentally orientated funds as well. So it is and always has been a key focus of the group, and I believe it's one of the leaders in the world in that respect. But having said that, I have to say that Babcock and Brown Infrastructure, or BBI, which is the company purchasing Northwestern, is completely distinct from Babcock and Brown, the investment bank. We are separately listed and separately traded investment company, and we have a very specific investment mandate. We invest in essential infrastructure, which is generally operating in a regulated environment. So we are looking for, generally speaking, we are looking for regulated revenue streams. So we buy utility assets, we buy energy networks, we buy transport networks, and we do not invest in power generation in whatever form, whether that's alternative energy or traditional forms of generation. There are other funds in the Babcock and Brown family that do that, but we don't. The only way that we would get into investing in generation assets if that is through Northwestern being allowed to invest in rate-based generation, and that is only possible if some form of re-regulation bill or reintegration bill is passed, which enables them to do that, because they're not currently allowed to invest in that form of generation. But with that, Dave, if you have a few comments.
Well, thank you. Let me first state that Northwestern Energy's service territory has probably one of the highest penetrations of wind energy currently in the Northwest, at about 11%, part of the renewable statute and our Judith Gap facility. The issue with us and energy supply and the re-regulation efforts that we have, if you will, are for stability in markets and stability in customer base, so that we understand as we have an opportunity, or if we have an opportunity to invest in generation, to have a customer base as we go out and secure long-term contracts, that we understand who they are, how much energy we have to either buy or acquire through new build or brownfield, if you will, existing facilities. Because that's one of the issues. You have to be able, these are long-term investments. You can't make those investments and then have a fluctuating customer base. So that's one part of the question. As far as supporting wind development, Northwestern Energy has taken a very proactive role in transmission development in the West, and we've got two projects that we're thinking about or trying to promote. One is upgrade of our system, 500 kV system in the state going westbound, and then an effort that we've started to develop a transmission facility south out of the state, all of which is designed to allow new generation to be built in Montana and take advantage of some of those resources that we have. The wind energy potential that's here in Montana is great, but it needs a market, and that market isn't necessarily all just in Montana. In fact, The Montana market is growing gradually, but if you really want to have wind generation and opportunities, we need to be able to access other markets, just the same we do with our cattle and grain in Montana. So I think there are a number of things that we're doing that we believe are supportive of all of the initiatives and may even be able to create a brighter future for us in the energy business as we provide some stability to what we've gone through in the last decade.
Steve, I could also, voting against your proposal, I believe it's Senate Bill 344, we're four of the
yes.
5 commissioners.
337, yeah.
337.
Yes.
We're 4 of the 5 commissioners on the Public Service Commission, including myself.
Mhm.
2 of them, Commissioner Rainey and Commissioner Jurgensen, I can assure you, have no animosity toward wind energy. You might suspect my motivations, but I can tell you that I voted for the Judith Basin project, for the approval of the project. Northwestern Energy is one of 2 utilities in the entire United States that does not have regulating reserves of its own. They get all of the regulating reserves from Idaho Power. Regulating reserves are critical in wind energy because regulating reserves would allow you to respond every 4 seconds to variations in the input and output to get them back in balance every 4 seconds. They have had to go out and buy new regulating reserves, which are very, very much in demand and very, very hard to get in order to incorporate Judith Basin into the system that they have. Now, to come along and say we should add another 50 megawatts of wind energy to that system without solving the problem of the regulating reserves, which they cannot get any more of. Idaho Power has told them, this is not going to last, and you're not going to be able to keep this forever, and we cannot give you more. To put more wind energy, which further destabilizes and requires those reserves, without Northwestern Energy having the ability to respond to it within their own system, it doesn't make any sense. No one is against wind energy. You have your telescope focused on the wrong spot. We are for a orderly and rational development of that energy because it is what it is. It varies.
And yet, we have said, and it's actually been included in the bill, that if we cannot make the agreements to provide the firming energy, then it doesn't go forward. So we have already said that we will take that on our end. In addition, what we're doing, and I don't want to get into the Green Electricity Buying Cooperative discussion too far, but we have also said that we're not taking any money from the state. We've got federal bond authorization, so it's an incredible opportunity for the state to get a model of how small wind energy producers can begin to interface with the Northwestern grid and start to create a market for small energy producers. Instead of any kind of support of that, what we're seeing is incredible opposition. If we can't put it together in an appropriate relationship with Northwestern, if we can't get bond authorization, if we can't get firming, then we're not going ahead. So all we ever asked for is the right to own our own electrical generating capacity. And that is what we're being fought on, is whether we have any right to own electrical generating capacity. That's all we need from the state. The federal authorization provides us with the money to go and try the experiment, and then the private bond market will either approve of that or it will not. One of the ironies is that we got lectured on business plans from the former lobbyist for Touch America, which is a pretty remarkable thing to have to hear. Whatever we do, we certainly are not going to lose the people of Montana anything like the amount of money that Touch America did. So we're simply trying, as small businessmen, as capitalists, to take the system, to be able to create a new opportunity. And at that, I would leave the discussion of Green Electricity Buying Cooperative and again take it back to the greater opportunity that is there to work in partnership with what necessarily is the only game in town, the transmission system that everyone is going to need to interface with to be able to create these alternative sources of energy. And either we can be on the same team and we can know that we have partners in this, or we can go back to a model where the only kind of energy that's here and available in Montana is coal and the next generation of coal, and I don't think that serves any of us. You know, I'd like to know not just wind, but that there's a place, you know, a willingness and an openness for small hydro projects, for PV projects, for the many, many other sources of alternative energy that can help the people of Montana continue to live here and make a living for their kids. And I'd like to, you know, I would hope that BBI and its parent company would, if perhaps have a discussion with Northwestern Energy about whether the level of interface with the renewable energy community right now is the one that it wishes to have in the long run, because I don't think that we should be opposing one another. I think we can find a way of working together. I think we can find a way of creating the kind of win and the kind of state where everybody is working together to solve the energy crisis that we're all facing. And I guess I would leave it at that, and thank you for your time, but I'd also really ask that we hear more about, you know, how BBI is, you know, what their position and their policy on renewable energy is, how they're going to support the development of it in the state, and what we can look forward to, because I think that's one of the real considerations that in both the re-regulation and the purchase that we need to know. Are you going to be willing to play with the people of Montana to develop a renewable energy industry or not? It's certainly been a long, tough slug here the last few years for many of us with Northwestern Energy. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Corrick, and I do believe you're on absolutely the right tack when you talk about cooperation. That's exactly what has to happen. Further questions, testimony? Sure. Mr. Williamson.
Good evening, Commissioner Mood. Thank you for the time to be here and your guests. I appreciate this opportunity. This is definitely not my area of expertise, so I'm going to ask questions. I see this as an opportunity to learn. But first, I wanted to say I've lived all over the United States, and I had to compliment Northwest Energy. I think it's one of, if not the most reliable electric service as a consumer that I have ever been involved with. So. Also, I'd like to thank Northwest Energy for our alternative energy learning site that we have here in Missoula. They recently helped us put in some additional electronics and some solar voltaics there that make that much more robust as far as a training center. So thank you very much, Northwest, for doing those things. I have some questions, and they're probably naive questions, but nonetheless, I think we as a people in the United States and in the world have a responsibility and obligation to become energy independent, and I'm on that bent and trying to find the best ways to do that. And I compliment Northwest in attracting international interest in what we're doing here in Montana. Business is here to make money. Bottom line, we talk about customers and everything, and of course they got to be satisfied, but the bottom line is business has to make money, or else our whole capitalistic system will implode on itself. In that regard, our friend from Australia has to be very knowledgeable about the rocky history that we've had here in Montana with electricity, and I'm wondering why you would want to get involved with something and put your money in it, in something that has such a rocky history.
Well, we can only look forward, and we can only, you know, there's the old saying that that you know what you do today is what you will become, and you know, all I can say is that our intentions are good in coming in to purchase Northwestern and to become a partner in what they're doing and in their growth. We believe that the current management team has done the right thing by stripping out all of the non-core businesses that caused a lot of the trouble in the past, and focusing again on being a true utility business and sticking to their knitting, and our philosophy is certainly to support them in that, and to make sure that they do keep focused on being a utility business, because that's the business that we're in, and so we can only look forward. We can't be one of the difficult things in this process for us is that there is this tendency to almost sort of hold us culpable for some of the sins of the past, and we understand that because we understand a little bit about the history, but there's really nothing that we can do about that. We can only look forward, and we can only say that we're here for the long run and put our best foot forward.
Well, in that regard, what role do you see BBI playing in the governance of Northwest Energy?
Well, representatives from the BBI management team will take up a number of positions on the Northwestern board. Our CEO, Steve Bolton, will be the chairman of the board. But in addition to the BBI people, there will also be independent board members who will be local U.S. citizens who will take an independent view on the board and will head up key governance bodies separate to the board, such as the audit committee, will be headed by an independent director. So we will essentially comprise most of the board, and that will be our general level of involvement in the business. We necessarily have to take a fairly hands-off approach. We just want to see that things are running as we expect them to run, that risks are being identified as you go forward, and that those risks are being managed. And so our management of the business will essentially be that of an actively interested owner, an actively interested board.
Okay. Excuse me. I read in the Wall Street Journal almost on a daily basis of, to me, exorbitant salaries being paid to corporate chiefs these days. I think the most recent one I read was Merrill Lynch, the head guy there, is getting paid $38 million, which is a sizable sum to me. I'm wondering what your stance is, or BBI's stance is, on bonuses and salaries for head executives.
Well, certainly we'd like them to be as small as possible. But I think, look, I think I think probably the best way to answer that question is to say that Babcock and Brown, in general, is a surprisingly conservative firm, very conservative in its outlook. So I think it's safe to say that our view is that we would probably agree with you that there are some outrageous salaries and bonuses being paid out there. The BBI management team is certainly not remunerated in that way. We are not in the sort of investment banking mode of salaries and bonuses. In terms of Northwestern management's remuneration, again, there is no intention to change the status quo. There's certainly no intention to come in and increase or decrease salaries to any great degree.
Okay. Is it usual, and again, I'm naive on this, is it usual for someone to want to invest in an electric company that doesn't have any electricity? Do you guys have other investments like that?
That you mean that doesn't have any generating capacity?
Yeah.
Yes. And this is probably one of the things that attracted us to Northwestern, because we're very used to, coming from Australia and New Zealand, where there is complete separation of the distribution or transmission side of the business from the generation side of the business. We're very used to that model. So we're very used to, and in fact our business our utility business in New Zealand, PowerCo, is purely a distributor of energy. It doesn't own any generating capacity either, and in fact it doesn't even sell electricity to consumers. It sells to a retailer, which then sells to the consumer. So we're very, very comfortable with that model.
Okay. What, in those sorts of endeavors, what's the rate of reinvestment that you have seen in the past, and you would see for a company like Northwest?
Well, the rate of reinvestment in that we have seen, for example, in New Zealand has been steadily increasing. Unfortunately, I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, but I'm happy to get back to you with some specific numbers. But we're in New Zealand, as in many parts of the world, we're at the start of quite a steep replacement cycle because of the age of the assets, and so owners of energy networks are having to spend more and more to actually just to maintain the current service levels. In terms of the amount required to reinvest in Northwestern, again, this is something where we would take the guidance of the local management. And Dave, you may want to weigh in a bit on the asset management plan.
Sure. Well, in Northwestern's case, in 2006, and we made an investment in the company of a little over $100 million, or roughly $100 million in capital expenditures, which is significantly over the depreciation of what our business is currently earning. So from an accounting standpoint, that's a fairly significant increase. We're also developing a multi-year capital and maintenance plan that we hope to take to commission staff and ultimately to the commissioners to take a long-range look at the needs of the company, the needs of the systems, not of the company, I should say, in Montana, and what investment it should take to keep those systems operating reliably, and thank you for that comment, as well as providing access to the system to others that may want to use it. So,
Okay. Do you see in the distribution system in the future a role that DC distribution is going to play?
DC distribution or transmission?
Transmission, I'm sorry.
Well, some of the projects that we've looked at in our region and throughout our network and others in the Northwest have looked at long-haul DC transmission, and that's where it really becomes economically viable, is when you're getting on an expressway, say in Montana, and you want to, or say in Oregon, and go down to California. There's a DC tie there. If you have a lot of intermediate stop-offs, it's not very efficient or cost-effective. But certainly, depending upon how things grow, if there's large pockets of wind development or other things that maybe are selling to other markets, it is.
Yeah, and that was my next question, how it might interrelate with the alternative energy capabilities that we have here in the state.
Well, again, the load growth in Montana is the organic growth, or local load growth, is not all that great. So we believe that some of the real economic advantages for Montana and its expansion of its resources is to avail ourselves of markets outside of Montana, and that's where perhaps a DC link might be viable.
Has anything been done by Northwest to obtain new rights of way for such a new system, or is that still long in the future?
Well, hopefully not. We have not obtained any new right-of-ways right now, but we did file what we call for a decision from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission last year. A declaratory order is what it was called, for a pricing mechanism that's a little bit different than what FERC, who is the agency that controls transmission tariffs and access to the transmission system, to develop a new transmission facility out of the state that would allow us to make sure that those that receive the benefit paid the cost of that facility, and also protected the Montana network customers from having to pay for a facility that's ostensibly used for export. So we did that, and we got the green light from the commission. So we ran an open season on a new project south out of the state, and we're in the different phases of trying to move that forward, but we're actively pursuing that.
Okay. And I couldn't sit down without asking our Australian friend what role you see in hydrogen being a firming source of energy in the future?
It's really not something that we have a particular view on. Dave, did you have a?
Well, there are firming resources. There are traditional ones such as gas-driven combustion turbines. There are compressed air storage, pumped hydro, any number of different regimes that are available that should be looked at. And we're willing to look at all of those. But I think to Commissioner Mood's point, in Montana and the Northwest in particular, we need to develop those what are called ancillary services that allow us to firm wind and bring that on. And that re-regulation bill that the company has been behind would allow us to rate base some of those kind of projects, so it would have an advantage in that arena as well.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, Commissioner Mood, and I would implore everyone to not stay completely focused on the business at hand, but look into the future and see what we can do better to get there. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. I believe we had Dory. Go ahead, step forward, Dory.
I'm Dr. Dory Balco. I am a member of the AARP Utilities team, and I'm also a communication specialist with AARP. I'm here this evening to talk with you regarding AARP's position regarding the acquisition of Northwestern by Babcock and Brown. And AARP has joined this PSC case as one of the few energy consumer advocates in Montana. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization dedicated to people over 50 years of age, and we have 153,000 members in Montana, residing in each of the 56 counties in our state, and all segments of the socioeconomic scale are represented. Our members have a direct interest in the rates charged for energy supply service, as well as the public purpose programs funded through the USB's charge on our energy bills. The UBS provides services to the benefits to Montanans with lesser and fixed incomes. That is why we have been permitted to offer these comments at each of the PSC's public forums. We are all, public customers and regulators, too familiar with the instability and difficulties of the past decades as it relates to our utilities. While all consumers and customers have been impacted by this roller coaster, it is easy to overlook the fact that those with the least are impacted the most. The Commission must be cautious in going forward so as not to repeat our past mistakes. One facet of exercising this caution is to include the following measures protecting limited and low-income customers as a precondition to any approval. 1, the permanent increase from the current 15% in the electric and natural gas discounts for the qualified fixed and limited income customers in the utilities discount program. We know that this discount program can assure a year-round reduction in the energy burden and help customers better manage their own affordability. Next, the new eligibility guidelines for the low-income discount program so that it is available to any customer who is participating in the LEAP, which you know is the Federal Assistance Program, as well as any other state financial assistance program that has a similar income eligibility requirement as LEAP. Next, the new utility should increase its contributions to weatherization programs in Montana. National studies have documented well that weatherization is very Now, we know Northwest's call center performance is very good, but we still would like to have you improve it a little bit more, if it's possible. That we would like to do. Dave? We are grateful for this opportunity to share AARP's suggestion on how to assure stronger, specific customer protection, especially for our most vulnerable customers. At the March 14th meeting, the hearing on this case before the PSC, AARP will present more detailed comments and suggestions. If anyone here is interested in receiving more information about our position, please give me your phone number or your email, and I will pass that on to Pat Harper, who is in Helena, and she will get in touch with you. But we will all be there for the March 14th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. Do you have other comments? Sure. Please step forward. You could state your name, please.
Hi, Doug. Finally meet you. My daughter's Joe Radke. My name is Mary Hamilton. I'm speaking as a private citizen, but I am part owner in a solar installation business here in Missoula. We've been in business 12 years. It's a family business, and my son and my husband are out of state on a job right now in Colorado. They just got back from doing volunteer work in New Orleans. But I feel kind of obligated to say something to Babcock and Brown. Don't put up any walls against solar energy. I'm a solar advocate. And you, Doug Mood, please open the door, because there's no firming needed with solar. Solar's peak. It's there, and it's for everybody. Anybody can put it on, and it only relieves the pressure on the transmission lines so they last longer. Okay? I get nervous when I talk, so I'm going to shake here for a minute, but I'm here. Coal plants, nuclear plants, natural gas generation stations, even wind farms and large hydro dams require major transmission facilities. Solar electricity almost always requires no transmission. That is the big point about solar. Okay. It has been projected by FERC that a new national grid to satisfy the future needs of the U.S. market for electricity would cost $2.3 trillion. That's taxpayer dollars, because we pay for it out of our taxes when we do that. A national grid, Dick Cheney wants a national grid, and he wants to spend as much money on that as he's going to spend on this war. So there are going to be about 115 million households in the U.S. by 2010. $2.3 trillion, and I did the math and I looked it up on the census, how many households there would be in 2010, and $2.3 trillion would put a $20,000 solar system on every household in America. That's not a household that's a mother and a father and 2 children. That's every household, single person, every household in America. $20,000 solar system at peak. So here's your curve during the day. Here's your base load that Northwestern is so worried about having to match with the wind and all that. Okay, here's your base load. Here's when everybody uses power during the day. Here's when PV works during the day. That's no firming. From there out, no firming. Open the door. Don't stand in the way. It's heaven. It's a win-win for all of us. Okay. That's twice the size system that I need right now to offset my entire energy bill electrically in my house. I have a 2,000 square foot house, 2-person. A $20,000 solar system, because I have done the efficiency in my house. I've got an efficient refrigerator. I have an efficient washer dryer. I have an efficient, all my light bulbs are compact fluorescent. I've done that. I cut my bill in half. It will offset the electric part of my bill, that $20,000 solar system. Your tax dollars that would go to build a national grid that any terrorist could bomb and shut us all off with could be put into distributed generation, and it's not needing to be firmed. Solar energy is almost always peak power. I mean, very seldom that it isn't peak power. Solar hardware has longevity like no other power source. Solar electric replaces its embedded energy in about 18 months, and it has a 25-year warranty with an expected life of 50 years plus. Okay. I'm so extreme, I think every piece of coal that we pull out of the ground and we burn, we should force people to make PV with it, and you can't do anything else with it. And put those PV panels on people's houses. That's how I feel. We don't need a utility that can monopolize, criticize, and rationalize and run roughshod over renewable energy at every turn. We do need a PSC that supports extreme conservation with creative imagination. Imagine a farm that actually has a switch on that mercury vapor light out there. So the rancher can actually go out there and shut it off. The utility cannot force you to run a light that you can see on the moon. Put a switch on that thing. Every farm in America has one or two of those. You can see them from 100 miles away. What's the point? It doesn't do that farmer any good. Let him switch it on and leave it on if he wants it on. But at least make it so he can shut that thing off. Imagine clotheslines being legal anywhere you want them. Now people, they build a new development and you can't put clotheslines up because they're ugly. Well, Andrew Wyatt thought they were beautiful. It's a cultural mistake. It's a cultural mistake to force people to use clothes dryers. Why make that law when we're killing ourselves? We're going to be extinct in 20 years if we keep this up. Imagine no mercury in our lakes and our rivers. Imagine. I have 8 grandchildren within 80 miles of us, and I can't take them fishing in the Clark Fork River. You know, why is that? We need to clean it up. Imagine solar on every home in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton.
I'll be very brief. My name's Peggy Miller, and I'm here as a citizen of Missoula, but also on behalf of what I call High Ground Communities, which is a project we are working on, a few of us here, that relates to trying to set up pilot cities around the country, starting with Missoula, which would go off-grid and off of oil and fossil fuels, using renewables. And I just want to, the one thing I didn't hear tonight that I think I was a little surprised at, though the comments I think have been excellent, and I would like to support them in general. Just in the last few weeks, we've heard from the IPCC on global warming. The statistics are out. They're extremely strong. The data very much supports that it's a time we as a world, and that this country in particular, because of our carbon emissions, has got to do something in order to change what we do about that. And I guess I'm a little surprised as I listen to the comments that there hasn't been more tied in with that issue. Wind power obviously deals with helping to reduce carbon emissions. The United States needs to deal with that. Australia, in fact, needs to do more and is beginning to do more. But this country is really out there in terms of being a leader at carbon emitting, and we need to change that. And the concern that I have is that whatever company buys Northwestern, this is a stage that's extremely volatile in our energy policy and in our energy development in this country. Nothing that I'm saying is new to any of you, but I do believe in the next 10 years we will be, from a policy standpoint, grappling intensively with carbon emissions, changing our tax structure related to carbon dioxide emissions. But at the same time, what I see happening, which is good, is that the citizenry is beginning here in this country to become far more outspoken and to do more in individual projects across the country in terms of trying to reduce carbon emissions. And And that was why I was just only a little surprised in terms of the discussion related to where we are at this juncture in 2007. We have a number of other countries around the world that are already going off-grid within the next 10 years, totally off fossil fuels. And we have hydrogen being set up in filling stations in California and superhighways being discussed. Personally, as part of this High Ground Communities project and the research we did recently, and I would encourage you to go to highlandwinds.com and download the paper if you're interested at all, but it's, there's been a lot that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years related to hydrogen and the use of it as a firming, and then using PV panels or wind and producing hydrogen, both as a fuel for vehicles, but also as a firming mechanism, so that wind can be developed far more rapidly. I was already having conversations with Northwestern in terms of having Missoula be one of these pilot project cities, and interest was expressed because it ties into a combination of using conservation, so pulling down your energy demand, super insulation, using pellets, geothermal, a combination of both heat and energy sources, as well as hydrogen produced from PVs and wind. And DOE has just recently come out with a statement that their statistics now show that the use of, it takes about 500 acres, depending upon your wind power in the area, to produce 1,500 gallons of hydrogen that's equal to a normal filling station demand in a day, or 40 acres of PV panels. And the reason I'm trying to say this stuff, it's really moving rapidly. And I don't really say anything, I'm sure that's that new, except that a lot of people are sort of familiar with about where it was about 10 years ago, and it's moving that rapidly, the research. And I believe that it's critical, and the only point that was made by Stacy Rye earlier that I think was a valid point, that if you have a company purchasing Northwestern, because the energy field is so rapidly changing at this point, as well as the whole energy policy issue is so volatile and changing at the same time, that if you aren't on top of that, and I'm not saying this company is or isn't, but based on the little I know so far, they're obviously aware of wind farms and their potential. That's good. I think a company coming from outside isn't always a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It depends. But I do think the point she made about because the industry is so complex right now, that having a company that isn't extremely on top of that can be a concern. And I would encourage you to give that some consideration in terms of your analysis of this company. But otherwise, I would only encourage you to actually download my paper. And the only reason I say that is because it has 90% of it is the most recent statistics, in case you haven't done a quick check on what Stanford and DOE and everybody came out with in the last 6 months, so that you can quick update yourself, but also so that you will realize that as the dialogue continues, that things are changing, and that this is a point where renewables are very much possible, not only economically, just straight across the board, but because of the costs of carbon emissions, may be really the only true economical source of energy we've got, just pure economics. So otherwise, thank you, and thank you for listening.
I have a dream that Paul out here is going to be successful in developing hydrogen energy so that all of us can get off the grid just about the time Adrian and Dave here retire. Anyone else? We've got about 10 more minutes, and we'd like to wrap it up if we could.
My name is Bruce Baxter. I've been a Montana ratepayer for a few decades now. I've wanted to add a comment to Mr. Moore's opening comments. I'd say most Montanans realized we had another seismic event in 1997 when the legislature came up and, as an afterthought, deregulated consumer prices. I do hold a degree in economics, and it's been proven over and over again that when you deregulate a monopoly, it invites disaster, and Montana proved to be one of the worst disasters around, I believe. I've also learned as a ratepayer over the years that the ratepayers, let me put that another way, we understand that the investments the power companies put into dams, power lines, pipe in the ground, natural gas pipe, is included in the rate base. So over the decades, the consumers have paid for these possibly more than one time over, the price of all of these investments. I'd like to pose a couple of questions. I'll sit down and then see if you want to answer them. I think Montana would be far better served if Montana's consumers owned the production and the transmission facilities. I understand Northwestern Energy fought severely against a bid from a coalition of cities. I think they would be better served if we owned this. We've already paid for it, certainly several times over. My questions are, Babcock and Brown, I'd be curious if somewhere down the road they'd be interested if the coalition of cities can come up with a bid to buy this property, if they'd look at it. I'll leave it at that.
Do you have an answer, or would you like to address the last question? And then I think I'll ask Dave to address the MPPI question.
Yep. Babcock and Brown Infrastructure generally buys assets for the long haul. We wouldn't be buying Northwestern if we didn't think that we were going to hold on to the business for a long time to come. We're not in the business of churning our assets quickly. It's just not the nature of what we do. So I'd say that it would be fairly unlikely that we would be looking at any sale of the business in the short or even the long term.
From Northwestern's perspective, I think one of the lessons of the last decade is that we had a system that worked fairly well for the first 90 years of the previous century, and we believe that that's probably a model we should go back to and will work. To that extent, we think that's a private ownership of the utility through BBI and what they can bring to the table and access to capital and other things is an appropriate way for us to go, and at least what our board of directors at this time believes is the right answer.
Anyone else, very quickly? Seeing none, I'd like to say a couple of things. On the back table here, we have what's known as the statement of factors, and when Northwestern emerged from bankruptcy, the commission that was existent at the time looked at the makeup of the shareholders, and as I stated in the opening comments, the shareholders were very different from the group of people who existed prior to the bankruptcy. They took a look at the shareholders and realized that the company was going to be vulnerable to some sort of takeover or to be sold off. So they put together a statement of factors, and the statement of factors I think you'll find very interesting is the core things that we will look at on the commission in order to approve or disapprove or approve the conditions the proposed sale. And there are a number of copies out here, and I'd welcome you to take those. In the final analysis, the question that in my mind that stands in front of us is this going to help or is it going to hinder the stability of the utility and the consumers who are ultimately paying the bill? And I can't answer that question. When we get through with the hearing next week and in the week following, hopefully we will have a lot clearer picture of what the future holds in store one way or the other. I will tell you this. Northwestern is at this point in time a very good company. The company itself has divested itself of all of the things that made it lose money, and I'll tell you, they never lost a nickel on the utility business. All of the peripheral things that they got involved in is where they lost money. Those are all gone now, and Northwestern is concentrated as a utility. It is a good company, it is making money, and it is reaping benefits for both its employees and the consumers. That has to be protected no matter what. And certainly that's my pledge to you. With that, I think, does anybody have anything in closing? If not, we'll be around here for 15 or 20 minutes, and we'd invite any conversations that you might want to get engaged in. I want to thank you all for coming. This has been a very good hearing, a very good public hearing, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you again.